Keeper of Secrets. Hey, sweet soul. Welcome to TOADStories, Tales of Authentic Decisions. These are stories about those moments in life when we choose to act from truth, even when it would have been easier to stay silent, to stay small, or follow the script. Today's story is called Keeper of Secrets. It's fiction, yet, like many Toad stories, it holds echoes of real life, of what it means to carry the weight of other people's choices, and what it takes to finally put that weight down. This is Maria's story, a girl raised in a house full of power and secrets, where silence was expected and appearance mattered more than truth. But Maria didn't just grow up, she woke up. She did the work of clearing the mess, reclaiming the legacy, and becoming a woman who speaks the truth with grace. If you've ever held more than your share, if you've ever cleaned up what somebody else swept under the rug, or if you're ready to live free from what no longer belongs to you, this one's for you. So settle in, take a deep breath, and let the story unfold. Chapter 1, The Dentist. I was 11 when I learned my father had other children. I was 11 when I learned that love meant silence. He called me Little Maria, the keeper of secrets, like it was a badge of honor, like I'd been chosen. I suppose, in a way, I had been. It was the day he took me to the dentist, not because my mother was busy, though she usually was, but because I had a molar that wouldn't settle, and he happened to be in town, a rare thing. His business, my mother's family car dealership, kept him in and out of the cities most of the week. He had married into the legacy and was entrusted to oversee operations, even the things no one talked about. We were early. The waiting room smelled like old magazines and fluoride. I sat quietly, ankles crossed, hands in my lap, the way I'd been taught. And that's when she walked in. Doris. I didn't know her name then, but I still remember her perfume. Strong and sweet and too much for the morning. She had 2 children with her. A girl about my age and a small boy, maybe 4. The boy spotted my father and squealed, "Daddy," like it was Christmas morning. He ran to my father and jumped into his arms. My father caught him, held him, kissed the top of his head. My father did that. I remember the way Doris smiled at him like they were on to something together, like I wasn't even there. "What are you doing in town, Doris?" he asked, his voice tight. I didn't hear her answer. I was called to the chair. As I passed, I turned back and saw my father lift the boy again and say, "Come here, my boy, give me a hug." That was the moment I stopped being a child and started being something else. Chapter 2, The Watcher Years. By 13, I could see a lie a mile away. The eyes gave it away. Almost always, either darting too fast or holding too long, like they were rehearsing. And then came the face touches. People scratched their noses, rubbed their chins, covered their mouths like the truth might escape. I didn't learn it from a book. I learned it from watching grown-ups tell barefaced lies while wearing polite smiles that never reached their eyes. Over time, I just didn't hear the lies. I could feel them. They moved through a room differently, changed the air, bent time a little. My mother started each morning with tea, always strong, always steeped, and always spiked. By mid-afternoon, she was either out of the house or passed out, sometimes with a lit cigarette in hand, smoldering onto the upholstery. One morning, I found my youngest sister floating face down in the shallow pool of the pond. She wasn't breathing. My mother, drunk in the afternoon, hadn't noticed she was missing. I pulled her out, screaming her name. She coughed, thank God, and I wrapped her in Babka's quilt. I didn't tell anyone. Why, what would it have changed? But that's when I knew I was the net. There was no one under me. I watched everything, everyone. I watched the maid flinch when my uncle entered the room, watched him brush too close and whisper things that didn't belong in anyone's kitchen. I heard him one night cornering her in the pantry, and when I walked in, he turned on me, shoved me down, and called me a filthy name. I went to my father, breath shaky, voice low, told him exactly what had happened. He sat quietly for a moment and sighed. "This is one of those secrets we keep for family, Maria." And just like that, it became clear. Silence wasn't survival only, it was loyalty, it was currency. So I stopped asking questions. I became useful. Not because I was good, but because I was clever, but because I could see everything and say nothing. Chapter 3: The Exile That Saved Her. Then just like that, I was sent away. No conversation, no warning, just a folded brochure left on my nightstand, and a note from my father said, "This is what's best, boarding school." The kind with uniforms and stone buildings and Latin mottos etched above the doorways. The kind where girls came with matching luggage, names that opened doors, and last names that meant something. I didn't have the grades for it, but grades had never really mattered in our family. Reputation did. The family name got me in, as it always did. At first I thought it was a punishment, a way to keep me out of the way, and maybe it was, but it saved me. For the first time I breathed air that wasn't soaked in secrets. Nobody there expected me to carry anything but my own books. No one flinched when the phone rang. No one froze when a door slammed. No one stared too long in the hallway. I made friends, real ones. We snuck out to the lake at night and dared each other to jump in with our uniforms still on. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. We shared stories. I learned how to sleep without having one eye open. I started becoming somebody I recognized, not because I found myself, but because I'd finally been allowed to exist. Coming home for the holidays was unbearable. My body would tense the second I stepped through the gates. The walls hadn't moved, but I had, and I couldn't pretend otherwise. The old roles, they clung to me like smoke. Dutiful daughter, silent sister, fixer of things no child should ever have to fix. But I no longer fit the part. I loved my sisters, that part had never changed. Yet I knew with every fiber of my being I could never live there again. Chapter 4: The Turning Point. My father died shortly after I graduated. There was no big announcement, no funeral filled with strangers praising a man they had never really known. It was just a phone call and a lawyer and a list of things that needed sorting. I didn't cry. Instead, I packed a small bag and took the first train home and stepped into the mess he had left. My grandfather, my mother's father, was still alive then. He owned the dealerships, the land, the legacy, but he had no idea how rotten things had become under my father's watch. The books were a disaster, silent partners with no last names, paper trails that circled back on themselves, quiet flips of property, washed VIN numbers, deals done in back rooms and favors traded in shadows. I cleaned house. Quietly, strategically, I kept my voice low and my standards high. My mother had fallen too far to pretend anymore. She no longer attended galas or garden parties. She didn't even dress for dinner, just wandered through the house in silk robes and vacant stares like a ghost who hadn't figured out she'd died. I had her committed. It wasn't cruelty, it was care, real care, one that no one else had the courage to give her. Babka moved into the main house. Even in her elder years, she was sharper than any consultant and gentler than anyone ever paid her to be. She brought herbs and prayers and the quiet strength that made the staff stand taller just by being in the same room. And then, when my uncle tried to step forward, tried to grab the reins of the empire with his smug grin and wandering hands, I called a family meeting. I stood at the head of a long dining table, my tea steaming in front of me, and said, "We do not need men who assault women at the forefront of our business." Silence. Chairs shifted, eyes dropped. No one spoke, and no one challenged me. Later that week, I voided every pending document with his name on it, had his office cleared, erased his file from the system. He could keep his secrets, but I preferred the truth. Chapter 5: Legacy Rewritten. I didn't rebuild the empire, I redefined it. I sold what wasn't worth saving. I shut down what couldn't be redeemed. Paid off debts that weren't mine because somebody else had to take responsibility, and that ended up being me. I reviewed every contract, met every employee, asked every hard question my father had never dared to face. People started cleaning up. It's easy when you have money. They don't know what it's like to clean up shame, though. People know how to clean, but shame's a whole different world. To launder a name without bleaching your soul. I kept the good, the loyal ones who had held things together through years of chaos. They were actually given raises. And the ones who had turned a blind eye, or worse, were escorted out with a clean severance and locked files. I didn't do it for applause. I did it because I was tired of being the girl scrubbing in the background while the family name dragged its mud-soaked boots through every hallway. Eventually, the grandparents passed, the parents too, and with them the illusion. I sold the last of it, what was still standing insolvent, split it fairly, took care of my sisters, and I even helped with my half-siblings where I could, not out of guilt, not from some bleeding sense of duty, because I could, because it was mine to do, and I chose to. I kept nothing for show, no estate, no title, no famed awards. I moved into a little house on the edge of a ridge, a place with windows that faced the sunrise, just enough land for wildflowers and my dog named Mabel. Chapter 6, Present-day Maria. These days, people assume I've lived a charmed life. They see linen shirts, antique trucks, and a woman who knows how to make sourdough rise without trying. They see a house that smells like cedar and lemon balm, a woman who plays pickleball twice a week and knows which moon phase she's sleeping under. They see ease, simplicity, and grace, and I let them. Because what I pulled off, what I survived, what I rebuilt, what I buried with grace and named with fire, was never meant for them. It wasn't a performance, it was a reclamation. Sometimes I still think of that day in the dentist office, the way that boy called my father Daddy, the way Doris looked right through me as if I wasn't real. And maybe back then I wasn't, not fully. I was a vessel for other people's messes, a quiet place to stash shame. Not anymore. I live in a house I chose. I speak truths I used to whisper. I wear what I want, love who I want. I answer to no one but my own damn conscience. The secrets that were handed to me like heirlooms, they're ashes now. I'm buried them in the fire pit under a full moon, barefoot in the grass with Babka's note in my head saying, "Your heart is your own real inheritance. Don't spend it on duty." So I didn't. I spent it on peace, on plants that need watering, on phone calls I actually want to return, on friends who don't flinch when the truth walks in, on a life that's mine. Messy, quiet, earned, however it is, it's mine. And it's enough, more than enough, because I am no longer the keeper of secrets. I am the teller of truths, and I live free. Well, thank you for listening. If this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you of a moment you found your voice or wished you had, you are not alone. We all carry things, and sometimes the bravest, most authentic decision is simply to set them down. If you'd like to hear more Toad stories, more authentic tales of decisions, you can help me grow this space by liking, subscribing, or sharing with someone who might need it today. Your presence here means more than you know. And until next time, be kind to yourself and honor your own story.